Look, we've been very focused this afternoon on the troubling news around the Australian man Yang Hengjun, who's now been formally arrested in China after 7 months of detention. We've just got news through that the Chinese Foreign Ministry, a spokesman for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Geng Shuang, has made some comments about this at a daily news briefing in Beijing. He said that the writer, the Australian man Yang Hengjun, is being processed in accordance with law, and that China is strongly dissatisfied with Australia's statement regarding the writer. Paul, it was a strong statement from Maurice Payne, but rightly so, given the way Australia's protests over this, well, at least requests for access and for some information about what he's charged with, have simply been ignored.
Well, and this is the way, I mean, gee, surprise, surprise. Australia just starts ever so slightly to call out China and some of its behaviour, but most recently Andrew Hastie, all the way through to calling out, through media organisations like our own, calling out the behaviour of the Chinese authorities towards locals here, the intimidation tactics that exist here, and then suddenly, surprise, surprise, bang, there's an arrest. There's what appears to be rather convenient timing of this particular arrest. And again, the Chinese government, even if you turn around and say, well, look, he's an Australian citizen, we want access to him, we want to be able to make sure he's okay, they react as if you have said the most offensive things in the world. This is the classic emotional bully tactic, right? The classic bully tactic, which is to pretend that every single moment of observance or the mildest of criticisms is as if you've walked up and spat in their eye. And because it's all about the dollars, it's all about defence, we end up either looking the other way or backing back.
I mean, that may well be right that this is a response to, Australia's positioning on China. Janine, it may also be after 7 months of interrogating this guy daily, it would seem, or twice daily even, as some suggest. He's cracked, and there's been some sort of forced confession here that's, entitled them to move to this next step in what is still a very opaque process. I mean, we don't really know how this all works, to be honest. But either way, it's very troubling.
Oh, it's more than troubling, but this is how every vile dictatorship works when you have somebody taken away with no legal representation and then they suddenly write a forced confession, particularly in communist nations. We've seen this through the last century, and you don't pay any attention to this. It's absolutely outrageous. But the irony of this is that China wants to be considered a world player. They want to be considered one of the proper first, nations as far as economies and being treated and diplomacy, and then they behave, like I said, like an authoritarian dictatorship, like someone outside the rules-based order. And when they're called out on that, they then do everything to confirm why the rest of the world is pushing back. And they just don't get it. And I was absolutely delighted to see that statement from Australia today. I am so sick of us kowtowing, and let's be honest, usually it's economic pressure, the mysterious hold-up of our commodities, imports. They'll do anything. This takes me back 10 years. I remember Stern Who. And we've had other cases. It just is an amazing coincidence that whenever we upset them, some poor bloody victim gets shoved in jail and thrown away for a while.
But also, I mean, there is this phalanx of apologists for China who have caused much trouble for some time, right? You can take your particular pick. I thought the patience you showed even sitting down talking to Kevin Rudd is impressive, David. But when he starts to spout that, that prepubescent politicians having things to say, and today Sydney Uni turns around and in defence of the Confucius Institute starts pointing out, well, no one has any problems with the French Institute. That's because they're a democracy. Not all countries are the same, and China is not the same as France. And it really almost got there. It really annoys me, the number of people who will just interchange things, just pretend it's all the same, they're the same as America. No, they're not.